So now we had learned in the Mishnah that when you're roasting, not boiling, cooking, or anything else, we're just talking about now about roasting, as we'll soon see. When you're roasting something right before Shabbos and it's not finished, it's not edible yet. So how finished does it have to be? Does it have to be a little bit, completely? That's going to be the whole discussion of the Gemara today. So anyway, so the Mishnah said, so you can't roast meat or onions or eggs unless there's enough time for it to become roasted. So the question is, what does that mean? The kama. So Gemara asks right in the beginning of Chafam and Aleph, the Gemara, how much roasted does it have to be? So the Gemara answers, Amar Rabbi Loza, Amar Rav, Kedei sheyitzelu mibaydoim k'machal ben drei. So Rabbi Loza Amar Rav says that it doesn't have to be completely roasted. Machlokes Rishonim, if it's 1/3 or 1/2, very famous machlokes. We'll have a whole discussion about this another time. That it has to be k'machal ben drei. So who was this fellow ben drei? A friend of mine, very, very wonderful mechanech, wrote a whole play for kids. It's a very cute thing about, if you were a robber working with, I don't know if it's the right thing to do for kids, working with this fellow named Ben Drei. Ben Drei was a robber. He was always running away from the authorities, from the cops. So therefore, he had to eat a quick meal. So the Gemara used him as an example. I don't know why he was zeicher to be in the Gemara so much. He was a regular robber, but it was a Jewish guy apparently. I think so. Ben Drei. That so he used to roast his meat for a third or a half, and he ate it. So since you see that there's a human being that can eat that, so that's good enough. And a person, if he roasted it in that much erev Shabbos, and then let's say the fire is going out, so we're not worried that he's going to stoke the coals and he's going to try to make sure that it gets more roasted. Because worst comes to worst, he's not worse than Ben Drei, so he will be able to eat it. So Gemara says, Itmanami, we also learned another opinion that holds of Michael ben Drei. Rav Asi, Rabbi Yochanan, Kol shum k'Michael ben Drei ein by mishum bishulei nachrim. This is what's negay very much bisman hazeh, that we're not allowed to eat something that was cooked by a goy. So let's say you take frozen food, let's say a frozen pizza, and like let's say on the plane, for instance, they heat it up for us. It's okay because the thing was edible already. It wasn't great, but it was edible already, and it was probably even more than Michael ben Drei. So anything that's just being heated up, the guy can heat it up for us. But let's say that you're finishing it, so it has to be at least a third or a half cooked or roasted. This Gemara is talking about roasting for another reason that we'll soon see about the Karban Pesach, which is wonderful to be learning this right before Pesach. But in any case, there's no problem of bishul akum. The Gemara of his lashon is bishul nachrim. It's all the same thing. Bishul akum, bishul nachrim. That as long as the guy cooked it already, I would say it was already cooked, Michael ben Drei, we don't worry if the guy's going to finish it. Now, what else about Michael ben Drei? Tani, we learned the Bais Chananya Omer. So now we come to Hilchos Shabbos, which is very, very negeya, and there's a big machlokes if we rely upon this Chananya or not. Big machlokes apaiskim. Chananya says, Koshu Michael ben Drei, as long as the food was cooked that much, again a third or a half. Rashi says a third. We're going to go with Rashi. A third. So now we know that there's a thing called shiur. We're going to go through the hilchos, basically the halachas of cooking on Shabbos a little bit, and that just literally, pardon my pun, to get a taste of it. And then we do Perek by Memadlikin, which is about different things, about wicks and candles, etc., etc. We're going to start today. Then in the third Perek, which is all about ovens and stoves, we're going to come back to Michael ben Drei. So Chananya says, Kol shuka machal ben Drei mutal hashois l'gabi kira. So you're allowed to leave it on top of a kira. Kira was this one pot stove that they had in the time of Chazal, and even today, a traveling stove would probably also be just enough for one pot. V'afal pi she'ein grufa uktuma. Now this term we're going to use a lot in Mitzvah Hashem, and not so much now, but in the third parak. So grufa means that the coals were shoveled away, and ketuma means that they were covered with ash. So the opinion of Hananya is that as long as it's grufa, as long as it's Michael ben Dreisen, it's mostly cooked, so you don't have to worry about grufa or ketuma. You could just put it on top of an oven. So in other words, it sounds like in our terminology, it doesn't need a blech. So I'll just tell you the basic, very interesting machlekes over here. Grufa or ketuma, shoveled or covered. So there's a famous machlekes, Reb Yashiv and his mechutin, Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. What kind of a blech do you need? So Reb Yashiv, as usual, not always, but most of the time, in those the machlekes, there's about 1,000 of them between Reb Yashiv and Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. So, and they were very close friends, and they had, obviously children together. Leah Auerbach was the daughter. She passed away already. The daughter of Rebbe Yashiv, and she married Reb Shlomo Zalman's son, Reb Israel, who has since remarried. So in any case, this is one of the famous stories. Some people say it's apocryphal, but the story was more or less accurate. That supposedly that Rebbitzin Azriel Auerbach, that's Rebbitzin Leah, happens to be she was very close with my Rebbitzin Mechaim Lav, the Mechaim Mechaim. So we know her very well, Mishpacha. So Rebbitzin Leah was going to shop for a blech. And she's looking at all the blechs, and she says, the man says, what, lady, what are you doing? He didn't know who she was. Lady, what are you doing? So Rebbe Yashiv held that the blech had to cover the knobs because of grufa or ketuma. That means that in the olden days, it meant that you're not going to be able to shovel the coals because the coals are out of the way. So Rebbe Yashiv held that the coals today are the knobs that turn on the gas or the electricity, and you have to cover them. And Reb Shlomo Zalman held that all you have to do is cover the fire. The ikr is that it's covered. In other words, the ketufa part, and you don't need grufa or ketuma. Anyway, so I don't know if Rebbitzin Leah knew the whole shtickle Torah. She just knew that her father says that it's okay, and her father-in-law says it's not okay. So the guy says to her, he says, lady, what are you taking so long for? So she said, I'm not so sure if I should buy the one that my father demands or that my father-in-law demands. So the guy didn't know who she was. He said, lady, why don't you just go ask a rabbi? So, it happens her father and father-in-law with the two Gedali Adar. So in any case, that's called Grufa Ketuma. It's a good Maisa to explain Grufa Ketuma. So let's go further.
That's why people pull the knob of the crock pot off, right? On Shabbos, to cover the knob.
That's right. That's right. Pull it off or cover it up with a piece of tape. It's even better to pull it off, by the way. A piece of tape can fall off, but the knob is not going to jump back on. If you don't mention make a bracha.
Amen.
A good nechaydish l'chaim. So now, ain't nice than a sapas. So now the same thing with the bread. So it said that it has to develop a crust before Shabbos, otherwise you can't leave it in the oven. So now the Gemara says a bunch of shilas. Exactly what is this crust? The shilah was like this. What's called tachtoin hechte gabitanor. So when it says that the bottom has the crust, so does it mean the part that's up against the oven wall? So if you remember, we had this many times, that in the olden days, the bread was thrown against the side of the oven. I'm told that this is still done in some bakeries, but I've never seen it. But I don't know that much about baking. But you throw it up against the side of the wall, and then eventually you take it off. So the bottom of the bread would be the one that was against the wall of the oven, right? So is that the one that we mean? Or does bottom mean when they had these, these kind of ovens that were shaped like a cone, and there was a very small hole at the top and the big fire at the bottom. So does it mean the part that faces the bottom, and that's the part that's developed a crust, or it's the part that's up against the wall? So the Gemara brings a right from a Bais. Toshma, that was our Mishnah. We have a Shiloh in the Mishnah. Gemara said Toshma will bring a right from a Bais. So the Bais is Rabbi Eliezer Omer. How much of a crust do you have to have? So you need the amount that has to become a crust that is against the oven. So it's clear that's the part that was shoved against the wall of the oven. Now we're going to talk about the Korban Pesach. So in the Mishnah it said that on Erev Pesach Shechali is b'Shabbos. I believe this is going to be next year, Mitzvah Hashem. Baruch Hashem wasn't this year when we had so much tzaros from Corona. If it would have been next year, we would have been have on top of that all the problems of Erev Pesach Shechali is b'Shabbos. So Mishalshin, I hope by next year, Bais Hashem, it'll just be a bad memory or we'll learn something, whatever it is. So Mishalshin is a Pesach, so you can lower the Korban Pesach into the fire, and it really hasn't even been into the fire. Close to Shabbos. Again, Leil Shabbos is Leil Pesach. Gemara says, my time. So how come we don't have to roast it up until it's at least Michael ben Droisoi? So the Gemara answers, Mishum de Bnei Chabura is reason. But this is a raya. The word zrizas over here doesn't mean fast, particularly. It means people that are careful. So the Mesilas Yesharim, those that learn Mesilas Yesharim a lot, Mesilas Yesharim talks a lot about that zrizas and zahirus go together. So over here, that's the pshat, that the people are zaris. They do things like rapidly, but they do things very carefully. So we're not worried about the people making the Korban Pesach that they're going to stoke the fire, because they know how to do things. Versus
But it's Yantif. It's Yantif.
But it's Yantif Shechali is b'Shabbos. We're not worried about the Yantif. Yantif is Mutter, but it's Shabbos.
I'm sorry. Okay. I'm sorry, I missed that.
You're absolutely right. Yantif would be Mutter, but it's Yantif and Shabbos together.
Right. Where are we up to in the Gemara?
We are up to my love. My love. So my love is, you see there's two dots, you see. So that's probably the best way to go. The two dots the same. Shalshin is a Pesach. My timer. Shum de Bnei Chabur is the reason. Hein. Olav hachiloi. So that's what we're up to, right? Halav hachiloi.
Right.
Got it? Nobody can point it out to you. I'm sorry. All right.
Yeah.
So the Gemara says halav hachiloi. So, but the Gemara says there's a kasha that if not for the fact that the bnei hachabura, the people that are together. Now, some Rishonim, including Rashi, mentioned that since there's several people. So first of all, they're all zrizim. Anybody that's preparing the Korban Pesach, they learn the halachas of the Korban Pesach. Nobody's going to touch a Korban Pesach unless they know what they're doing. So I'll give you a little bit of a bad example, but it occurred to me once at a chasana. So the Gemara says that people that don't know what they're doing should not write a get, because a get is a very complicated thing. So it seems that people that do not know what they're doing can write a ksuba. That's what sometimes happens. You have sometimes they're mechaber a zayda or somebody like that to be mesad kedushin. The zayda might be a big talmid chacham, but he might not be. And I've seen many cases where he didn't really know how to write a ksuba, made many mistakes, member of the mishpucha, and, thank God, sometimes there's a rov there to fix it up. So, but nobody's going to write a get if they don't know what they're talking about. I mean, even many rabbanim don't write gittin. There's a certain title, he's a mesada gittin. Right, so for instance, in our community, there are a number of rabbanim that are misadri gittin. Most are not, including me. I try not to write gittin if I can. I've sat on a bezdin for gittin. So over here also, people that do not know how to make a Korban Pesach properly are not going to do it, and there's reason we trust them. So over here, there's two things. First of all, you can never have a Korban Pesach by a person by himself. It's supposed to be a chabura. Sell the base of it. There has to be a number of people. So the Rishonim himself over here, that since there's a number of people together, so like Rashi mentions also, that since they're doing it together, so we're not worried. So now the Gemara says, "V'amamar." So how could we say that? What do we use as the Korban Pesach? A young goat or a lamb, right? Se is a lamb, and you can also have a goat. So the Gemara says, "V'amamar didn't want gadja ben sharuk beloy sharuk shapridami." So it's mashma that if the chabura wasn't conscientious, they weren't very careful, they weren't zrizim, so we wouldn't let them. Why? We said that by a gedi it's not a problem because Shapridam, where anybody's allowed to do it, even if you're just cooking a supper right before Shabbos, you're cooking a goat for Shabbos, we're not worried. Why? Because nobody's going to open the oven. What are we afraid of? They're going to open the oven and they're going to shove around the coals that the gedi, because it's very soft and very delicate meat, a breeze or a gust of wind, a puff of wind is not good for it. So nobody, we're not chayshing anybody of moving around the coals. So Gemara answers, Chasam. So where do we say that you're allowed to roast a goat from Erev Shabbos from the very beginning, and you're not worried that somebody's going to open the oven and shove the coals? That's menatach. That's when it's cut into small pieces. But over here, lemenatach, the way that they used to make the Korban Pesach, and maybe everybody's seen pictures of the Mishnayos of this. It's a goat or a lamb with its legs tucked in, and it's complete. It's whole. If you remember, we're maybe still going to get to it before Yom Tov. There was somebody called Tudus Ish Roimi, and he even after the Beis Hamikdash was Charav, so he used to make a lamb for not for the Korban Pesach, but like a zeicha for the Korban Pesach, exactly the way that they did it. The Chachamim didn't like that because it looked too much like the Korban Pesach. So anyway, the Korban Pesach was whole, and that's why we when we say over here that if not for the fact that there was reason, it would be usher. Now the Gemara says, so you can light the fire also in the Bais Hamikdash. So now, just a very quick introduction to what's talking about over here. In the Bais Hamikdash, they lit a lot of fires. They lit fires when they brought a carbon, and they had to roast it. They had to put it on top of the mizbeach, etc. But this was the fire that was really on top of the Beis Hamukad. If you remember from the end of Masechta Tamid, so there was a place where the Kohanim used to warm themselves, and they lit a fire right before Shabbos. So that wasn't needed for Karbanis. So in the Beis Hamikdash, although they were allowed to be quote unquote be Mechal Shabbos, but they limited it. It was what we call Dechuya, not Hutra. In other words, it wasn't an absolute like Shabbos is Tuesday. No. Whatever you're allowed to do, you're allowed to do, and you have to do. But whatever you're not allowed to do, you're not allowed to do. If I have a chance later on, I'll tell you a mice about this. Very interesting story. So anyway, so the Gemara says, "Menohani mili." How do we know this? So Amar Rav Huna said, "L'savaru eish b'chol moishvei seichem." It says that on Shabbos you're not allowed to light a fire. So it says that in your dwellings, in your houses. So you can't make a fire in your private house. But in the Beis Hamikdash, even in the Beis Hamukad, which was not really a fire particularly for the karbanis, so it was mutter. So Mar says, "Maskef for Rav Chisda hachi." So I feel be Shabbos nami. So what's the problem? If on Shabbos you're allowed to light fires, so now the Gemara is, so maybe we should be able to light every fire on Shabbos. So Elam Rav Chisda said, "Kro ki asa." What do we have the pasuk for? Lemishre avarim u'pedarim u'da'asa. That's only to put up the things that are going on for a carbon, which is the fats. Right, the parts that's avarim are the limbs and the organs and the fats. But this fire, so that you're not allowed to do it for Kohanim's reason, and the only reason that it's mutter is because the Kohanim are very careful, just like the people that make the Korban Pesach are careful, the Kohanim are careful. So now the Gemara says, but outside the Beis Hamikdash, kadesh shetechos. So if you're having a fire for Shabbos, so you have to make sure that the fire is completely a big blazing flame, and otherwise we're afraid that people will, let's say you want to have a fire on Shabbos, and for heat and for and not for cooking, but there's food on top of it. So we're afraid that people are going to stoke the coals. So Umar says, "My Reuben, what does it mean that most of the we're talking about, let's say, wood, that most of the wood is already burning?" Amar Rav said, "Roiv shukal echad v'echad." Every piece of wood. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm just a little dry. Every piece of wood has to be not just like there has to be a fire that's burning in most parts of the big fire, like in a fireplace, but every piece of wood has to be mostly burning. Because we're afraid, people are going to say, "Oh, come on, go get me a piece of wood so that I can put it under that firewood which is not burning well." So you see that in order to be able to use this kind of a fire on Shabbos, has to be burning so well that nobody can have to stoke it. So now the Gemara says, let's bring a riot to what Shmuel just said. Tana Reb Chia l'siyud Shmuel. So Reb Chia taught a brisa. Reb Chia was the big expert on brises. He taught a brisa to prove Shmuel is right. It says in the brisa, that the fire has to be so good that it's burning by itself, but not that the flame has to be stoked anymore. So now the Gemara brings eitz yechidi. Let's say you only have one thick piece of wood. So how much of it has to be burning? So Rav Amaroiv Uvyov. Mostly the fire has to be burning through most of the thickness before Shabbos. For Amrila, others said Baroiv Kefai, and the fire has to be burning through the circumference of the wood. One plank of wood. Let's say they were out of firewood, they're down to one piece of wood. That happened, by the way, around the time of the Churban, because right before the Churban, they didn't have enough wood. So Rav Papa said, Hilko Ba'ina and Roiv Avyoiv or Ba'ina Roiv Kefer. Since it's a machlokes, so it's a Shiloh in Hilchos Shabbos, and even the Bais Hamikdash, they didn't want it. They tried not to be Machal Shabbos, but over here we're not even talking necessarily in the Bais Hamikdash. We're talking about Bichlal in a regular fire. But even the Bais Hamikdash, they were careful. The Gemara says Ketanoi, and this is a machlokes Tanoim about the thickness or the circumference. Rabbi Chia Amar Rabbi Chia says that it's Kadesh Yishoches Ha'etz Mimolechas Ha'umen, that when you only have that one piece of wood, so how much fire has to be burning in it, that the piece of wood was already ruined, and no craftsman, that means like a carpenter or a builder, would use that piece of wood anymore because it was ruined for building, but it's good for burning. Rabbi Yehudah has to be burning from two sides. So even though we can't really prove this from a pasuk, but there's a little bit of a hint in the pasuk, because the pasuk says that by Yecheskel, when Yecheskel was being told how to build the third Beis Hamikdash, even though it was before the second Beis Hamikdash, Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky points out that it's about the third Beis Hamikdash, Mashiach. So it says, "Eshnei ketzosev achla esh." So when the two ends have been burnt by the fire, the toichay nachar, and the inside is already parched. So it says hayislach lemalacha, since it can't be fit for work anymore. So that's good. That's a good fire. So now the Gemara says, we continue with Yecheskel. So in Yecheskel, it says over there, it talks about the fireplace. It's called an och. An och, that was the name of it. Vesa och, lefana mevayeres. So right in front of Yecheskel, there was a burning fire. So Gemara says, my och, what exactly does that mean? So Amarav, it means achvana. Now let's see what achvana means. Ushmul amar eitzim shenidlaku be'achvana. Means sticks that were caught. The fire was caught when a bunch of sticks are burning each other. So in other words, one stick lights the other. So this achvana, if you ever, we canceled that trip, by the way, to Europe. So we were going to go to Europe. If you go to Eastern Europe, where the Holocaust took place, what? Oh, I'm not talking about the bones. No, I'm not talking about the bones.
No, I said postponed.
Postponed, yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. Postponed. Yeah, you're right. It's not canceled, Chas V'Shalom. It's postponed.
Hopefully Thanksgiving,
but,
maybe.
Thanksgiving week, right. Thanksgiving week. So in any case, so they're all over Europe, where Leolane or the Nazis used to just murder a bunch of Jews together, and then they fell into a pit, and then if they were lucky, somebody covered it up and made it into a kever. So later, after the war, 1945, 46, people went back, they put up a little matzeva, or just a sign, and they called it Kever Achim. Kever Achim. Brothers, all Yiddish brothers there. So that's what it's called Achvana. Achvana means brothers. Okay, let's go further. The Gemara brings a story to prove that Achvana is. So before we say Achvana, what is Achvana? So these are sticks that were burnt together. The Gemara brings a proof that Achvana means like an arava tree for aravas. There was a person that once said, like he was selling stuff. He was selling like wood or kindling for fire. Man bayachvana, who wants to buy achvana? And ishtakach, when they found, so what are you selling, man? What are you selling? He said ishtakach. It turned out there was arvasa. It was what we call aravas. Basically, like it's not even a kosher arava. It's a willow tree. If you from where I walk to shul, so on the right there's like a big willow tree. Every time I walk, used to hang over. You might have to walk around it. So the type of willows that hang over. It's usually not a kosher arava, Rabbi said. It's called arvasa, an arava. Now, Amar Ravuna said, if you are making a fire and it's loose reeds, so apparently the Gemara thought at this point that these reeds, they catch fire very easily one to the other, like achvana. That's where the Gemara connects it, and you don't have to worry if most of them are burnt yet before Shabbos, because they will catch on all by themselves. Agdon, but if they're tied together, so then most of it has to be burnt before Shabbos because they won't catch fire well. The Gemara is going to ask a kasha on this. Doesn't seem to make sense. This is what the Gemara said right now from Rav Huna. So now the Gemara goes on with what Rav Huna said, Garinin. If you're burning, let's say you don't even have wood, that you're very limited. You only have pits. So like the grape pits or pits of other fruits. So they burn fairly well. So Garinin ain't tzricha roiv. So they burn very well. You don't have to have most of them burning before Shabbos. Nastim b'chaysalos. But if you put them to a basket, so tzrichim roiv, then you do need roiv. So why is the kasha? Doesn't make sense. Maskum floor of chista. Adirabbi ibcham is the exact opposite. If you have the reeds that are all by themselves, they're loose. So then they might not catch fire because they're not touching each other. Agdon, but if they're in a very tight tied bundle, so then one of course is going to light the other one. And garin, and the same things with pits. Mibadron, they're all separate, so they don't connect. But nasnim b'chaysalos, but if you put them into a basket, so they should burn. And itmar nami, and we have a proof to this that the Gemara says, let's go to Amid Bais. The Amr of Kahana, Kanim she'igdan tzrichim roiv, that if you put them together in a bundle, so they do need roiv before Shabbos, lo yigdan ain't tzrichim roiv. Garinin, if you have pits, tzrichim roiv, so nosnon b'chaysalos ain't tzrichim roiv. So the Gemara splits it down the middle after this and says that if they're in a basket, so sometimes they actually are so tight that they really don't ignite. So they're so tight that it seems from Rashi, the lashon is over here that they're so tight that the fire can't get around. Now, Rabbi Yosef said, Arba Meduros, there are 4 types of fires that ain't tzrichim roiv, that they burn very well, and you don't have to have most of them burning before Shabbos. Shel Zephis, that's like a tar or pitch. Shel Gofris is sulfur. We just had a whole Gemara about that. Shel Gavina. Now you'll notice that these are things that, instead of wood, they didn't have. So cheese is a very strange thing over here. So the Rif's girsa is that it's not Gavina, but it's Kira, which is wax. That's the Rif's girsa. Seems to make a little bit of sense. V'shel Revav and grease. So grease is, we all know grease can cause a very bad fire, but when you want a good fire, like in the before Shabbos, so all these things do not have to be burning so well before Shabbos. That the Gemara says, Masnita, we also learned in a Brisa, Av Shel Kash, in addition to the ones that we had from Rav Yosef in the Brisa, there's a new Brisa. Av Shel Kash, also fire, V'shel Gevava, that's stubble, like little pieces. So not long pieces of straw, but small little pieces of stubble. So the fire is going to catch hold of them. This is like very flammable. Rabbi Yochanan, Eitzim Shel Bavel and Tzrichim roiv. The wood in Bavel that was very flammable, and if you're using it, then you don't have to have most of it burning before Shabbos. So Maskal Rav Yosef is the kasha. So what does Rabbi Yochanan mean? It says Mahi. What does Rabbi Yochanan mean? Elam is silsa. If we're talking about these very thin strips of wood that they had all over the place in Bavel, so what do you mean hashta psila? If even the wick, which we're going to have in a few minutes in the next parak, so even if it's a wick that a wick it catches fire more easily than a piece of wood, and yet a wick sometimes you can't use a certain wick because it's not flammable enough. So how could Rabbi Yochanan say that strips of wood they catch fire easily and you don't have to have most of them burning erev Shabbos? So when you're lighting, so you have to have most of what comes out of the oil. Let's say there's oil and there is wood, or whatever is your fuel, most of it has to be sticking out of the oil. So of course strips of wood. So you have to have it that it is burning well on Erev Shabbos. So therefore, Rav Yosef disagreed completely with Rabbi Yochanan. Elam Rav Yosef, he says we weren't talking about this. Rabbi Yochanan maybe meant, the only thing we can say about Rabbi Yochanan is that Socha de Arza, he meant the branch of a cedar tree which they used to have in Bavel, and Rami Bar Abba Amar Zaza. It's talking about moss. Moss we're going to have right now in Perak Mamem Adlikin, so I'm going to save it. So Hadran Aloch Yitzias Shabbos, at least we made a siyum on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, at least on a Perak. Now we're going to start Perak Ketzad Mamem Adlikin rather. Okay, so Hadran Aloch Yitzias Shabbos, Hadran Aloch Yitzias Shabbos, Hadran Aloch Yitzias Shabbos. Now the Gemara says, the Mishnah says, Mamem Adlikin. So now, what are we allowed to use as a wick, and what are we allowed to use as a fuel? So some things burn well, some things don't burn well. If something doesn't burn well, what's the problem? We're going to light, or the lady of the house, or whoever's lighting is going to light, hadlakas neiris, the Shabbos licht, and then what's going to happen? It's not going to burn well. So he or she, whoever is lighting, we got a problem over here. We're going to forget, we're going to move the wick around, or we're going to move the oil around, and we're going to be chayav for havara, a malacha d'oraisa. So therefore, what are we allowed to use, and what are we not allowed to use? So we're starting with the wicks, and then we're going to get into the oil. So you can't use as a wick, that comes from a cedar. The cedar trees obviously is wood, but it has the parts that are jutting out of the wood. It's called the bast. That's soft, and that can be made into wicks. That you're not allowed to use because it doesn't burn well. And you can't use the flax, which hasn't been unraveled yet. It's called carding. Or with the floss of the silk, that's not really silk itself, so it doesn't burn well. Or from, we just talked about, this is from aravis, the part of the arava that is soft, or the kind that you get that grows in the midbar. We're going to talk about this in a little while. I want to just tell you something about this very quickly. What is roikah pnei hamayim? So that's the moss or the algae. We'll soon see if it's algae or not that floats on the water. So just a quick ma'aser with two Gedol Yisrael, father and son. Reb Chaim Kanievsky Shlita, always says over from his father, the disciple. He was a little kid. He says it sounded like he was about 3 or 4. He was taking a walk with his father, and his father at some point in his life had to take walks for his health. Not a bad thing, right? He took his son along. Chaim, come here, right? Let's go.
Chaim also takes walks now.
Yeah. Reb Chaim's at that age.
He goes to where the Jaffa over there by the.
Right, when he
goes
goes
up
to
and down the boardwalk, I think like early in the morning, someone said.
Right, but not usually when it's warmer a little bit. So yeah, but I know. I've seen pictures. I never went with him. Yeah. So Reb Chaim says he was taking a walk with his father, and he wasn't looking at the water. His father looks at the water. Says, Chaim, look, give a cook. He says, you're right, Keshopnei Hamayim. There was something green on top of the water. He says, you're right, Keshopnei Hamayim. That's the Mishnah in Bamem Adlikim. So he said later that that's the way you're supposed to go with your kids. Whatever you do, you bring everything into the Torah. All right, you have to be the stipler in Reb Chaim. To remember how everything fits into a Mishnah. Now, so now what else can't you use? So you can't use, the Mishnah is talking about now we're talking about oils. Till now it was about the wicks, and now we're switching to the oils. So you can't use the pitch, like that's a tar-like substance. It's like black. And you can't use wax. Now, there's a shiloh over here. Does that mean that we can't have wax candles? So we're going to discuss this in a minute, because anybody that doesn't use oil generally uses a wax candle. So we'll soon see. So paraffin maybe, right? But what about wax? Wax was the candle that was used for thousands of years. So right now the Mishnah says no wax. So we don't know what this is yet. We'll get to it. Shem and kik is a certain oil that comes from a plant called kik. or with oil that has to be burnt. So we'll soon see later on what that means. It's a certain type of oil that you have a chiyuv to burn. The Gemara is going to explain. V'loiva alya, that's the fat from a sheep's tail, which is very fatty, and apparently it burns, but it doesn't burn well. V'loiva chelav, and not with regular fat from an animal, for the part of an animal that's fatty. Nachum Amadai says, madlikim b'chelav mevushel, if it's cooked, if the fat is cooked, so then it's mutter, because then it burns well. It doesn't burn well if it's cooked or if it's not cooked. Let's go to the Gemara. The Gemara says, what is lechesh? Shoichad da'arza. That's the bark of a cedar tree. So where it says shoichad da'arza, eitz ba'almahu. That's only, it's of course you can't use it for a wick because it's a piece of wood. Wood can't be used as a wick. So Gemara answers, no, ba'amronisa de isbe, that inside of it there's something woolly, and we'll see in the Gemara. Gemara is going to bring a story that the Amoraim also showed each other these things, and it was something that could be turned into a wick. So over here also, even it could be turned into a wick, but it doesn't burn well. What is chaysen? Amar of Yosef, we had this recently in the Irish Pishnan. That's the flax, but it's the flax, that part of the flax that's fluffy. So that theoretically could be turned into a wick, but only at a certain point in its development. So Gemara says, it says that this thing that comes from the flax will be burnt. So you see that there are two different things. There's chaysen and there's na'iris. Zakri said the chaysen is na'iris. Elam Rabbi said, Kisna the dayak v'loy nafitz. Chaysen is the part of the flax where you beat it. They used to hit it to take out the part that you could make into flax, into a fiber, but they haven't been combed out yet. So there's different stages where they're good and where they're not good. The Gemara is going to go into it a little bit more in a moment. I was hoping that we'll just still have like 2-3 minutes just to maybe go into some halacha. Now, you can't use kalach. So what's kalach? So Shmuel didn't know. So Shaltin l'chon I asked all the sailors. So v'amilan, they said kul choshmei. It's called kulcha. That's one shot. Rav Yitzchak bar Zira gushkura. It's like the floss of the silk. So now the Gemara brings another ma'aser. Rav and Rabbi Yosef kamed Rabbanan Nechemya achud reish galusa. So Ravina and Abaye, they were sitting in front of the brother of the reish galusa. Chazid Avilachish. Lavish metaxa. So they saw he was wearing, like I would say, a silk tishbekisha. Silk made out of silk. So Amalei Rav and Rabbi says, "Hainu kalach." Oh, now we know what kalach is. This nan, because we learned in the Mishnah we learned in our parak about Memadlikin. Amalei Abai said to Ravin, "Anan shira pranda karinole." We called it pranda silk. We have a different name for it, but it's exactly what the Mishnah is talking about. So Gemara says, Meisve, it's a kasha on Ravin, Shirayim is stam, silk. Shirayim v'akalach, and the silk that it's in the middle of being processed. So it was corded already, but it wasn't combed out. That's Sarikin, and so this kalach and the Sarikin is that's the part that was already corded. So chayav mitzitzis, so it's a finished garment, and you have to put tzitzis on it. So you see that kalach and regular silk is two separate things. They're not the same thing. So the Gemara says tiyuf to the Ravin, so it's a kasha on Ravin. So tiyuf to the Gemara says it's taka kasha on Ravin. Now the Gemara says you same, or we could say shiur l'chud, the shiur pranda l'chud. There are two types of silk. There's silk. One thing is called plain silk, and one thing is called pranda silk. Oh, machlokas, we show exactly what is pranda silk. I don't think it's the game right now. Okay. So what's silos ha'idon? So Gemara says achvina. That's called the woolly stuff, like we said before, that comes out from when you peel the bark away. And the Gemara proves this from a ma'aser. Rav and Va'abaya, because the paksa the tamarisa, they were walking in a valley called Tamarisa. And chazina lano arvasa, so they saw some what we call aravis, but again, it's really a willow tree and not exactly an arava. It's too it's too soft, and it doesn't hold up. If you hold it up, an arava has to hold up straight, and this is like very, very wishy-washy. It falls over. So Amalei Rav and Labaya, but Rav said to Abaya, Hainu Idon, this not. That's the Idon that's mentioned in our Mishnah. So Amalei Abaya said, he eats ba'almu. That isn't that just wood? So how can you make it into a wick? So Kolaf, so Ravina showed him how. Ravina Kolaf, he peeled it off. The achvilei amranisa debena bena. So he showed Abaya that this is the woolly stuff that's on the inside. So Gemara says, "V'lo yifsil sam midbar." So what's psil sam midbar? That's called shavra. It's a very tall grass that you can eventually make into wicks. So now the Mishnah continues. So what it said with that Maisa with the stipler and Reb Chaim, it's the green on top of the water. So Gemara says, Mahi. So if it's algae that grows over there, so if rucham afarchan algae, you can't make algae into a wick because it just falls apart. So where it says Almar of Papa, the ucham to the arba. No, this is the green stuff that's mamish moss. That's how we translate it in the Mishnah that you can find on the side of a boat. So that's the moss. Even today, it's always in the water. So there's moss that grows on it, but not algae. Sometimes you have to make a chiluk between algae and moss. Moss, yes, and algae, no. So Tana, we learned, I see for Aleim, so they added to the Mishnah, the Bais adds to the Mishnah, shel tzemer v'shel seir, if it's made out of wool or out of the hair, for instance, of a goat, so that doesn't burn well. The Tana Eden and the other Tana said tzemer michvitz kovitz, that the reason is because tzemer wool it just curls up, it's no good, and it shrinks. Seir it burns. So by the way, we see from here a very important thing about the wicks. A wick has to have two components. First, it has to burn, but not burn out right away. It can't just come to a stop, and even if there's still fuel there, the wick is gone. We've probably all seen this on Hanukkah, and also it has to burn well. Where it says v'loy v'zefes, and you can't use zefes. So where it says zefes, what is zefes? Zifta. Zefes is zifta. That's the pitch that we said before. And shava, what is shava? Is wax. So like we said before. So now the Gemara says. So Tana, we learn. Adkan psul psilos. Till now we were talking about the wicks. And from there on we're talking about the oils. So it says pshita, of course, that's when we're starting to talk about oils. What's the chiddush? We could figure that out. My answer shavitz tricholei. The chiddush is about using wax as an oil. Because now I would have thought the psilos nami lechazia, you can't use it for a wax. You can't use wax for an oil or for a wick. Kamash malan that it's okay. So now the Gemara says, Amar Rami Baravin, Etrana psulta de zivsa. So what is Itran? Itran is the residue. It's the schmutz that comes out of the pitch. And shava, what is the wax? It's psulta de dufsha. That's the residue of the honey. That there's a big nafkamina in halach. I'll show you for 1 minute. The mind nafkamina, Gemara says, the nafkamina is because of mekach umemker. So what is mekach umemker? That if somebody is selling you wax, so he has to give you the wax that comes out of the dvash, out of the honey. So there's a very interesting machlokes, not rishonim really, but it's mostly the achronim. If wax is something, apparently they used to eat wax. I don't know who ate wax, but there was a wax that was edible. And the shaila is that we're allowed to eat honey even though it comes from a bee, right? We're talking about beeswax now, right?
You remember that kid's drink that's looks like a bottle, and you bite off the top, you squeeze in the juice, and the rest is wax?
And the rest is wax. Oh, maybe that's it. So they bring from a number of shitas that, for instance, the Evan Yisrael, there was Dayan, he was one of Dayanim, the Evan Yisrael. So he writes, I'll remind myself of his name in a minute. So he brings a right from our Gemara that's Pselis Advash, and he says Kavani Pselis me Hayanika, you make honey out of it. So anyway, so some of them hold that it's asur. So listen to Reb Shlomo Zalman. Reb Shlomo Zalman, Auerbach, that's also, we just mentioned it before. Shegam l'divrei ha'omer shashava mitamtzis mevoluta shebegufa elachshus l'gezaklal. Even if it comes from the body of the bee, v'hashava muteres b'li pikbuk mishum Shehashava eina chashuva ka'oichel. It's not even a food. Vein shemada moichel k'shar oichlem. And most people will not ever eat it. Very ka'ofar or sid yavesh, and the ein bataris is a cloud. It's not usher at all. So even the im sheyesh shemoitzit semois, like the loitzim en advash. Reb Shlomo Zalman says, some people suck it to get out the honey. Ein zol misha kamisha moitzis eitzim vavonim. It's like a person that would be sucking a piece of wood or a rock, and it's mutter. So that was Reb Shlomo Zalman. The Ger Rebbe, the Pnei Menachem, was very careful. He didn't like this. Apparently, people in Eretz Yisrael used to do this. He said, "Sheshava mismatzes miguf hadevarim." It's made out of the body of the bee, and therefore it has a din of a sheretz. So who brings this? The Mishnah Halachos. So in this sefer that I mentioned, the Evan Yisod, that was Diane Fisher Zatzal. I had a little bit shaykhus with him, just correspondence. So he was one of the Gedolei Ador, and they were all machmir, and Reb Shlomo Zalman was mekel. Okay, but anyway, we started Perek Mem Adlikin. Those that say about Mem Adlikin tomorrow night, hopefully we'll have a new understanding of the beginning of Perek Mem Adlikin.
Why does it say? Why does this mission start? B'mem adlikin, b'mem adlikin, then it goes through aim adlikin. It goes through the ones that you shouldn't light with.
It starts with right. So that's a very good question. Some of them were like the Meiri, the Mefarshim, to talk about structure, talk about this. So there's two ways that a Mishnah goes. Sometimes the Mishnah goes A B B, and sometimes it goes A B B B A B B A. For instance, the first Mishnah in Brachos goes like that. A B B A. In other words, you talk about Aleph Ketzad. So by Mem Madlikin, by Ein Madlikin, that's called Mimai Desolik. A, B, and then you start to discuss B. So it's not, it's not such a big kasha, but the Meiri, or you're mechaven to the Meiri.
I remember
Okay.
somebody a long time ago.
Okay, all right, yeah.
And then,
which one does it discuss? The Kesef Sharbabiyah, and then, but it discusses Kesef actually. Over there it's A. It's over there it's A, B, A. Yeah. So, but there's all machlokas about it. All right. So we will. I think tonight, just for them, I think we're doing that for the men. Last night I did women. 8:15. I think we're continuing Haggadah tonight, if I'm not mistaken. And I have another shiur tonight. Also, we're going to send it out in the mail because I'm supposed to be doing tonight also preparing the house for Pesach. So each of these will be at a different time. And they asked me to give a Shabbos drasha. So I think that's not going to be tonight. I don't think it's time, but sometime tomorrow, if you're interested, I'll be talking about the parsha. So
Rabbi, I might go to get the Gemara.
Oh, I meant you came on a little bit early. I announced that I have it. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me.
I asked my father. I got one from a shul.
Oh, no. Thank you.